Hello, and welcome to the Beyond Screens Alternative Controller Show. My name is Alistair, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Tatiana.
Hello. And in this show, we invite developers of out-of-control video games to tell us about their work and show us what they're working on.
For those of you who may be new to the world of alt control, these are video games made to be played using unusual custom-made controllers. For example, a game may be controlled using a door stopper or an electric guitar, or maybe even a paper shredder. Or the creator might build a totally new object made by soldering together their own electronic components.
And this time, I'm the one in the hot seat. I'll get to experience what I've been putting our guests through.
That's right. And I get to give you the big, bold introduction that we always give our guests. So let's have a big round of applause for Tatiana, an interactive artist, playful installation creator, and alternative controller game designer. She also conducts academic research into game design and interactive art, which she teaches at a variety of institutions across France. So we're going to take a look at some of her creations. And of course, we're going to field your questions to her in the chat. So to kick us off, let's see some of her work in action. This is Aitcheson. So Tatiana, can you tell us a little bit about this fascinating piece of work that we just seen?
Yeah, so this was Aitcheson, as you said, and it's the game I exhibited the most of the time. It's basically a cooperative twister, electronic twister played on the body of your partner, but we'll have time to talk about this later.
Yes, yes. But shall we kick off this sort of the story of you and your creations with, I guess, kind of, well, where you started out, educationally. So, before you started in video games, I understand you did some humanitarian work in Senegal.
Yeah, so technically it's not humanitarian if there is no crisis.
Right.
Humanitarian is only when there is a crisis. Otherwise, we talk about international solidarity or sustainable development. But yeah, I did that kind of thing before. Instead of going to high school, basically, I had the opportunity to make a special high school, let's say, where you do some associative work in associations and prepare a project for a country in development. And so I made this project of building a dispensary, a health place in the north of Senegal, in a region called the Fouta, and it was quite enlightening. That's a place where there is no water, no electricity, and also it was a lot of responsibility for teenage me, and it gave a lot of meaning to my life at an age and in a situation where I was missing some. And after that, I couldn't do stuff without meaning, basically.
Yes.
So it was great, but the counter effect of that is that I've been unable to face absurdity after that. I needed meaning and to do projects. So it shaped a lot the way I did work in the video game industry, not being able to just make stuff for money or, yeah, I needed a purpose. But yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah. And I mean, it certainly sounds like, quite an undertaking to be doing, as a teenager, as a kind of, as part of what was effectively your high school education.
Yeah.
And then I understand from that you went to study game design at an undergraduate level at university. And did you did you bring some of the things that you'd learned from this work in Senegal with you?
Yeah, working by having so much responsibility in conducting a project really shaped the way I'm working right now, doing my own games and making my own project. Also during this time, what I did instead of high school. I also worked in an association that's a big one in France. It's the biggest government-funded association in France dedicated to teaching. It's called La Ligue de l'Enseignement, the teaching league, I guess. Its mission is to make education, culture, and sport accessible to everyone. And I mean, I always enjoyed teaching. When I was a kid, I was playing 3 games, but basically video games, pretending to be a teacher and creating my own games in my mind, or my own story, which basically turned into my 3 jobs. So all this was it was prophecy, I guess, very foreshadowing. And yeah, after that, I decided to go for, so I did some distance learning, and then I had my high school diploma, and decided to, I was hesitating between going into art, music, and video game, and I chose video game. I chose video game instead of music because I'm sacralizing music a lot. I don't regret not doing music and keeping music as my hobby. I didn't want to spoil this for myself, not waste it. So I chose video game, and I started a very common type of game school. Back then, it was a very general school. Like, you know, sometimes school can be specialized. You do game design or game programming, but this one back then in 2009, it was general. So I did game design, level design, UX design, game programming, 3D modeling, graphic design, a bit of sound design and project management. And then you got to pick and choose and do your portfolio the way you want it. You want it. And yeah, I started making a lot of game jams during that time. It was really like for most people, this experience was where I met most of my friends, most of the people I started to work with, including Olivier, which I say hello to. He's my partner in crime in most of my games nowadays, and he's doing the behind the scene technical streaming stuff today with us. I say hello to Olivier.
Hello, Olivier, behind the scenes there. But yeah, so this game design bachelor, and you said you took part in game jams. I understand you took part in quite a lot of game jams. You know, this wasn't just a game jam here and a game jam there. How many game jams do you think you did over the course of your degree?
So I counted up until the end of my bachelor. It was over 30. By the end of the bachelor, it was 38. But I made some since then, so I don't know what's the number now. But yeah, it was a lot. I kind of have a workaholism problem, which can be great, sometimes not so much. But it was such a formative experience. Like, it was so insightful. It made me grow a lot. I know nowadays we talk a lot about crunching and how it's bad, and it is, of course. But back then it wasn't talked about so much, and yeah, it was a way for me to iterate on my game design process very effective, very quickly. So yeah, it helped me, evolve as a game designer pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been a great opportunity to experiment, to work with different people. And like, did over the course of doing these jams, did you kind of did it help you find a voice or a direction, or maybe kind of, things that you particularly liked exploring with games?
So I'm going to say something we already talked about a bit. So I was a very systemic type of game designer. And as you know, I think there are two types of people, like people that are coming from a very intellectual approach to game design, and then they have to be more focused on the experience. Otherwise, the game experience will be quite dried. And the other type of game designers are the opposite for me, people coming from the experience point of view, and they have to be more conceptual. So there is no bad or good way, just you come from a point A and needs to go to point B, or vice versa. I was the type to be very conceptual and very analytical.
Right.
So I made a lot of games that were very systemic with weird concepts. Actually, I started working with Olivier in a game jam I made during my second year, I think, of studying. This game was made during the art game weekend. So this was a game jam. Maybe people don't know what I'm talking about, but maybe people know about the Zoo Machine game jam, which was the biggest out-of-control game jam in Europe for a while. And Zoo Machine was actually the evolution of Art Game Weekend. So I participated in the second Art Game Weekend, and we made this game called Exine. It's I would pitch it. I would describe it as, imagine you're inside a Rubik's Cube and have to make it through. You need to escape it by changing shapes and colors of this giant maze. So there is this kind of the Cube movie vibe to it, etc. Stuff like this, which is
so are you approaching this from a designer? Were you approaching that from a kind of very kind of logical standpoint? Is that, the game experience is, say, about solving a logical puzzle? Was that kind of...
Yeah, that and trying to mess with people's mind. I enjoyed that a lot.
Right.
So with this double focus on mainly on the system, like seeing game as an object that I have to make like complicated and tricky. And so this was really the vibe, the mood I was getting for back then. My final year project, which I also made with Olivier, it's called Stowe, and it's a game about indirect control of an environment that looks like a petri dish, and you got to find a way to make these kind of living creatures that are looking like boys behave in a way that fits your goals. So like very, very systemic, very oriented towards game systems. And after that, slowly, thanks to game jams, I realized that you can do way simpler stuff that were actually better, because players, they don't care that you are super clever as a game designer and did something like super complicated and even innovative. They just like maybe not want to have fun, but at least have an experience. Like if it's simple, the simplest the better. So thanks to my love for art, I decided to mess with players' mind, but in a more direct, straightforward way. And so I made a game jam that I worked on alone. And my the first game I made truly alone and that I released is the first game I made for MechBurn, which is the name of my multimedia project where there are all my alternative controller games and artistic games in general. And this one was based on optical art. It's called Lachi. It's kind of 3D maze with a lot of stuff about like to evolve in this maze, to progress, you need to transgress what the system is asking you. Nowadays, it's pretty common when we think about Stanley Parable.
Parable.
Stanley Parable, and games like this. But back then it wasn't even released, so it was already quite new, at least for me. And so you have these arrows, but if you follow them, you just go in a circle, and you have to, yeah, not follow the system's rule. Also, I found it weird that like winning a video game is about finishing it, while games is supposed to be an experience you enjoy. So the end of the game is always based on a timer, and you have different stuff to find in the game, stuff like this. So it was a bit messy, but much more about the experience. And so it's all based also on optical arts. So there are a lot of optical illusions in this. So I was progressively going for something more experiency. And yeah, this is how I started my artistic work.
Right. So I guess you've got what's going on there is sort of, rather than, you know, you're kind of treating the player as a kind of problem solver, you're treating the player as a person who is going to experience sensory information, and that's something that you as a designer can play with. Is that, would you say it's kind of like that?
So at the beginning, I was trying to be, yeah, a sort of, I would call that a game master.
Right.
To make an analogy to tabletop role-playing game, for example, like coming with problems and situations, almost in a sadistic way, I guess, like, oh yeah, try to solve this.
Yeah.
And then with Lachi, I went for something a bit more experience, in the sense that I wanted players to find themselves in situations where it was hard to even understand what was going on screen, like what's the floor, what's the ceiling, etc. And I always enjoyed messing with players' mind. So
Yeah.
this was based on visual illusions.
I
But
see.
I progressively, still during game jams, made games that were messing with their mind, but also body. So I
Yes.
started exploring coordination, making games that were where it's hard to coordinate, because I'm asking players to do different stuff with their fingers, or, you know, like a drummer, basically this type of coordination, still playing with people's mind, but in a more physical way. And all these three, Lachi and the two games I made about coordination. The first one was Isochrone. It's a game also about music, phasing in music. But yeah, you have basically dots, and you have to change the speed of the dots and to align them, basically. And that's one. And the one I made after that, which is Tetra, which is a bit in the same vibe. You have to coordinate tongues coming from the side of the screen. Like, it was the game shows a monster that looks a lot like, on purpose, like Shumagorath. It's a monster coming from the Marvel, this kind of stuff. Like, I think it's in the last Doctor Strange movie.
Right.
I didn't see it, but I think it's in it. Yeah, and you have to coordinate the tongues of this monster, whatever.
And how are you controlling the tongues of this monster?
You have 4 buttons. So you have a pink tongue and a pink button, a blue tongue, a blue button, a green tongue, green button, etc. So with Isochrone and Tetra, I started having reflection research, doing research on the controller, but it was quite simple, just arranging a bunch of buttons to fit the need of the games. So it's technically alternative controller, but not part of the gameplay per se, or not that much. And yeah, these are the 3 first games: Lachi, Isochrone, and Tetra. These are the 3 first games I exhibited. Isochrone in the Not Game Fest. No, Lachi in the Not Game Fest, which is a festival that's not happening anymore, but I really enjoyed it. They were pioneers in the European art game scene. And then Isochrone was the first one I exhibited at Geekopolis. It's a festival for whatever that means, geek culture.
Right.
And Tetra at a festival called the Retro No Future Festival,
I
which is
see.
about weird games.
So, I mean, off the back of that, because it seems like, you're already experimenting with the human being as a kind of sensory input. You're
Yeah.
starting to experiment with, building customizable buttons in order to control games that, moving away from the traditional controller. It seems kind of quite a conceptual leap to go from those games to your next game, which is Adsono that we saw later. So, like, what spurred the mental leap to go from here's a bunch of custom made buttons, on a table, to here's a bunch of custom made buttons attached to your body?
Okay, so after my bachelor, during my bachelor, I started working in the industry, but after my bachelor, I kept on working as a freelancer and also started my kept on doing my studies. So I went studying. I was studying in Paris. This is where I'm born, and I went in the south of France to study in Montpellier. And there, I kept on studying game design, but in an art department. And so I started making. So they challenged me basically, saying, "Okay, I was the person with the best programming skills, which was a big gap for me because in my bachelor, I wasn't top of my class in programming. I was in game design, but not in programming. And so
Right.
I ended up in a class where I was the person that's most experienced, with the most experienced, biggest experience with actual video game development.
Mm,
But I was really late when it came to art and artistic researches, etc. So
I
they
see.
challenged me, but with a lot of benevolence. I love these people. And I'm still in contact with them. They are wonderful people. And they basically told me, okay, keep on researching those stuff. And so I ended up doing first, how do you call that? Dissertation,
Mm-hmm.
year dissertation. I don't know how you call that in English, about perceptible but intangible controllers. So basically experimenting with games controlled by smoke or lights, stuff like this. And as
Right.
part of this, because all my researches are research creation
Mm-hmm.
researches, meaning that I do make games alongside the research. I made my first, what I would call my real first alt control game, which was Oort. And
I see.
uh, it's a game about lights, and you have this kind of pod racer on screen, and the pods are light powered, and you have two boxes with lights, and you can hide the light with your hand. So the less lit the box is, the more the pod will fall because it's light powered. I mean, I explained it
Right.
poorly, but you
So
got it.
if your hands are low down, they're covering the light up. That's going to make it darker, and you've got a light sensor that's detecting that darkness and going, oh, this almost like a kind of analog stick or an analog trigger or like a
Exactly.
slider. That's really clever. That is a really nice kind of like inventive use of the technology. I mean,
Thank you.
what did that feel like to use?
It's okay. So it was a good idea, but as people were really focused on screen,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really get the kind of experience I was expecting to have or
Right.
hoping to have. I wanted players to feel like they were controlling the pods from the pod racer with their hands, and it
Right.
felt more like you were playing by putting your hands up and down.
I
So
see.
this was not exactly the kind of experience I had in mind. And
Was it
so
more like you were looking for something that kind of felt like using the force or something? That kind of
maybe something
okay.
like this, something a bit more godlike, I'd say, or
Right.
at least DIY, but not that, not what I
Okay.
had. Like it was okay. Yeah, it was,
Right.
I mean, my first real alt control, but not exactly what I was looking for. Not quite my vibe.
Right.
And so after that, there is the story continues about art, but after making art, I had the opportunity to go to the art game weekend 4. And this is where I made Atsuno, and Atsuno was made with the conclusions, the results, the outcomes I had from art. So no
Right.
screen. First thing I knew I wanted was a no screen experience, something that is much more inspired by children games, street games, stuff like this. So
Right.
Twister came in mind. Again, back then, today, I'd say going for a twister in alt control is a bit more obvious. But back then, we didn't have Shake That Button as a website of reference for alt control, etc. So I was just experimenting there. And
Yeah.
so I thought, yeah, maybe. So I'm
So
simplifying the story, but let's say I went for a twister-like experience. Actually, it took some time to go there. But yeah.
so I'm just, I mean, I feel like, so getting rid of the screen, identifying that the screen was something that was holding you back, that was keeping you away from achieving what it was you wanted to achieve. What was it that the screen was doing that you didn't like?
Absorbing any focus
Right.
of the players, and a screen. I mean, maybe it's obvious, but the reasons why are not that obvious. If you put a screen somewhere, it's it's like eating any energy, any concentration, any focus people have. Not only players. I was having lunch with Olivier yesterday or 2 days ago, and there was a soccer match, like a past soccer match
Yeah.
from like weird Italian, not weird, but like I'm not so much into soccer. So yeah, it was a TV in a pub. And
Right. I see.
like it's a soccer match, it's a soccer football match from two Italian teams I don't know anything about. The match is already passed for days. Like I
Yeah.
have no reason to look at this soccer match, like no reason. Soccer game, sorry. We
Yeah.
say football match in French, sorry. Soccer game. I had absolutely no reason to look at this. We were having an actual conversation, and yet we ended up talking about what was happening on screen.
Right.
And like, I mean, this is the power of a TV, of a screen. But the problem is, it's already the kind of video games you have everywhere. Games are
Right.
made to immerse players. Like there is this injunction coming from the industry about immersion, that gamepad, they are meant to be forgotten to the benefit of digital immersion, and which is good. I mean, it makes for a great escapist experience. You just escape in the fiction, etc. But the problem I have with this is that it's all you have in the video game industry. That's all you'll find. And alt control, it can offer that to people playing in another way, that any way that is emancipated from the screen. So
Yeah.
I'm not against screens. I use some in many of my alt control games, but as a starter, I think it's better to try to experiment with no screen
Right.
experiences.
So this was a game where, and perhaps we could see the intro video again, just to give the audience a feel for it, but like where, so you've got two players and they've got buttons attached to their bodies. Is it 5 buttons attached to their bodies in different locations? And what's the challenge? What are the players trying to do?
Yeah, so there are 5 buttons per player, and the buttons are strapped to the player's body, one on each limb and one on the belly. There is an LED inside the button, and the players need to press all delete buttons simultaneously. The
Right.
problem is, if I can call that, the challenge is that you have to do it on both bodies. So at the beginning, you only have 2 buttons on each body. So that's quite easy. Like, let's say my two arms are lit, and
Yep.
your two arms are lit. Maybe we
Yep.
can try to do something. But yeah, let's pretend we are playing at snow full
Oh,
screen. But when you have five of them, it's more complicated.
I
And
see. And it's cooperative?
it's cooperative, and it requires flexibility and balance.
Mm,
It makes for a great clubbing experience. So
right.
I said at the beginning that it's the project I exhibited the most, and the reason for that is that it's the first one that I got to exhibit not only in art environments, but also in clubs, music festivals, because it's the kind of games where players need to show off a bit, like, or maybe not
Right.
show off, but be in sometimes they will look silly, I guess, because when you play Twister, sometimes you look silly, and that's part of the fun. But
Yeah.
doing this in a public environment, yeah, it's easier with drunk people, or also this is the kind of environment where people are trying to get closer to each other.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so yeah, it's a great game to, yeah, flirt, whatever you want to call that. Children, of course, kids are a great audience for that too, but kids that tend to break stuff, so it's
Right.
easier,
Okay.
more than drunk people, actually. I'd say from my 10 years experience, I'd say drunk people are a bit easier than kids when it comes
Yeah.
to breaking installations.
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of, so just thinking about other work in your portfolio that is very suitable for kids, in terms of, rough housing and willingness to throw themselves around. There's a game you made, I think it was 2018, called Negemu.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's Japanese text, which I can't read, so I hope I'm pronouncing it right. But this is played on a mattress. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, so it was inspired by my practice of judo. The
Right.
idea behind this was basically, okay, if I had to keep the fun of doing judo without all the training and practice, what would it be? And I tried to put it as simple as possible. So it's a mat on the floor. It's a competitive game for two players, and there are six buttons on the floor, three pink buttons and three blue buttons, and there is a projection um, en douche, trend toward, yeah,
Like a shower,
okay, yeah,
kind of
exactly,
projected
like a
downwards.
shower, and in French, shower is douche, of course,
Right.
nothing to do with the English word, and but yeah, trend toward the floor. And the system will highlight one of the button, and the players need to press this button first, and you win when you have 3 points in advance, 3 points more than your competitor. So yeah, this is the kind of games that children enjoys a lot. I actually did it in my first out of Europe residency in Tunisia.
Right.
And my first players were college students, um,
Right.
and we had a lot of fun. It was actually really enjoyable. So, but yeah, I had a lot of kids playing that too, obviously, for obvious reasons.
Yeah. But I can see a kind of confluence there of kind of ideas that were present in your game jam work, and ideas that are present in work like Adsono, in that it is a very physical game. It is about, you are very aware of your body. You are, it's where you're jumping from place to place, but also aware of the kind of sensory limitations of your body, like, navigating through the space, which is changing when you don't follow the arrows. This is a game where, like, so as I understand it, the way the buttons are laid out in a kind of triangle, there's always a button that is very easy for you to reach, but not easy for you to see. Like, you have to turn around. So the way you would see it is by your opponent leaping towards it, and that's what you
Absolutely.
respond to. So
Yeah.
is that kind of, thinking about the body like that as a kind of, as a mechanical object with, joints and limbs and things, but also as sensory inputs, is that something that kind of motivated the design of this?
That's interesting because I never put it that way.
All
But
right.
yes, this is by design that you always have to behave based on your opponent's behavior, basically, or
Right.
react to your opponent's behavior. This is coming from judo, where you try to use the strengths, the force of your opponent against him or herself.
Right.
This is why judo is not about forcing. It's
Mm.
about timing and positioning, etc. This is why I enjoyed it, because this is why I chose it, because I'm quite small. We cannot see it
Right.
on camera, but when Stephanie saw me for the first time, oh, Stephanie is the co-founder of IndieCade. She saw me for the first time at Alt Control GDC this year. First thing she told me is, "Oh, you are quite small, quite short, actually." Okay, I took it personally, but it's not the first time I heard this. So judo is the kind of a sport for me. I guess for our American fellows, BJJ is the equivalent for them, Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Right.
But yeah, and but yeah, to come back to your question, thinking about the body as part of an environment is by design, but not in the way you put it. So that's quite enlightening for me because I'm
Right.
not seeing it that way. What I thought about a lot about Negemu. Okay, Negemu came at a moment where I was starting to actually make game design frameworks for alternative controller game design,
Mm.
which is what I'm doing now. So I'm doing this since 2018. And I presented my early works on this at the GDC during a lecture, which helped me a lot to be known in the alt control field. And Negemu came at this moment during just before I made this lecture, big lecture. And I was coming from seeing the controller as providing game challenges, which can be something happening in Alt Control, to reflection thoughts about the porosity between physical and digital spaces. So what's the deal with the magic circle in Alt Control? So just to put it quickly, the magic circle is a concept in game design that is coming from people like Jacques Oriot and Huizinga. So the kind of people from, I don't know, the mid
Philosophy.
sociology and
Okay.
anthropology, but yeah, humanities, human sciences, whatever. Um, so this is the kind of stuff we read as game designers usually in game design, game studies. And there is this concept of the magic circle, which is, to put it like, my teacher self right now is having a hard time to put it that simply, but okay, I'll try to put it simply. It's the border between um the normal world and an activity that has some rules. So it can be games, but it can be like religion ritual, cult
Mm.
ritual. It can be a sport. It can be certain type of work. So I like to take an example that's not game to explain it, because it's coming from game mainly. So in judo, there is a physical embodiment of the border of the magic circle, which is the mat. The
Right.
moment you step on the mat wearing your gi, so the kind of clothes we wear, wearing your judo gi, and tying the nut on your belt, etc., you enter a new world where some stuff are allowed that are not allowed in the street, to put it
Right.
very simply. Like, it's okay if I grab someone and try to throw this person away.
Yes.
That's actually expected, while in the street people could be mad for that, or a little upset with me, I guess. So
Yeah.
yeah, this is the magic circle. And the thing that's interesting for me is that in Alt Control, and especially playful installations, we have the possibility to physically embody this in another way, because usually in video game, the border of the frame of the screen is the border of the
Mm.
magic circle. The game rules apply inside of it. Outside of it, what am I doing? Pressing
Yeah.
the A button, pressing a trigger or whatever. But in the screen, I'm jumping, shooting, And
Yes.
actually, we have a meme that's famous for that. It's press F to pay respect, which
Right.
embodies
Yes.
this idea of the playful metaphor on screen that makes no sense. Like paying respect is like a way too complex concept to be
Yes.
like, and so with Negemu, I had the same reflection that Atsuno is interesting, but if I had to make it nowadays, I would say that I would work on the environment more,
Mm,
because it creates confusion between what's the magic in the magic circle. So
I
what's the
see.
physical world, what's the game world, etc.
So an example of that would be, say, if you're, if you're very, immersed in a game of Adsono and you and your friend are rolling around on the floor, you could be kind of barreling into people who are just hanging around having a drink and tripping them up. They fall over, spill their drink everywhere. They weren't in the magic circle of Adsono, but have you have brought that space and kind of sort of brought them into it against their will, or whatever, is chaos ensues. Is
It's
it that
a
kind of
collapse. Yeah, it's a collapse of spaces. And this is why I'd say that it's working in clubs, because clubs, there are the entrance, the door to a club is a border of a magic
right?
circle. I mean, you are expected to dance. You can dance. I mean, it depends on the club, of course, but let's say you're at the Omaze Festival. During an evening at the Omaze Festival, people are here to party. Some are drunk or not, just they
Yeah.
are naturally drunk, let's say. Like, they don't need alcohol for that, but you're already in a magic circle, so that's easier because your game is part of a broader experience that has its own rules, so that's okay. But imagine what happens, and it already happened when I put Atsuno in an art gallery.
Yeah. What
You know what
happened?
I mean? Well, it's just not fitting the mood. So it can be by design. There is an
Right.
artist I like a lot that's called Christian Falnice. Is a Nordic, is coming from the north of
Mm.
Europe. And his specialty is that he has a piece I love that's called Justified Beliefs. And you have 4 players, each one wearing a Bluetooth headset. One is red, one is blue, one is yellow, and one is green. And each player has a rule that he
Mm-hmm.
has to follow. So maybe the rule will be always copy what the yellow player is doing, but the yellow
Right.
player will be asked to do some squats. And
Yeah.
so when you arrive as the audience, you look at this. I mean, it's so weird. Like, you enter a room, you're in an art gallery, like experiencing traditional art. So looking at like paintings or whatever. And then suddenly you have 4 randos that are doing weird stuff and you don't understand. And maybe you start thinking, oh yeah, but these are performers. But then suddenly one put off the headset and give you the headset. Like,
Right.
so weird. So it can be by
Yeah.
design, but
Yes.
in Atsuno, let's be honest, it's not by design. It's meant to be a game experience in itself, not disrupting another magic circle, blah blah blah. So
Mm.
yeah, Negemu, the difference with that is that I thought it through the environment and the influence of an environment on the players, on the experience,
Yeah.
and on how you perceive a game experience when it's physicalized, when there is a physical
Yes.
embodiment of it.
Yes. So I guess the literally that the magic circle is literally now a space that can be inhabited by players. Yeah, that's
It's
fascinating.
embodied.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's kind of, it sort of, I know it speaks to me of a kind of a playful kind of approach to space, a playful approach to bodies, and saying, this the physical world around us is something that can be kind of manipulated, that can be played around with, that can be subverted. And it makes me think of some of your other more kind of toy-like projects that you've created. So I understand you've done some work in the kind of in the world of VJing and like other things for clubs that aren't necessarily games. They're more well, I'm thinking of things like Nivos, which is a
Mm,
kind of VJing toy made of these kind of rubber balls. Like,
okay. Yeah. So Nivos is a really old piece of mine.
right.
I made that, and I'll come to clubs after that, but and VJing, etc. So I talked about OART, which was
Mm-hmm.
my first actual alt control game, in the sense that I was actually having some reflections about this, some thoughts about this. And I submitted OART to an art competition and I won, which was like so big for me back
Yeah.
then. And what I won is an exhibit and also an art residency in Czech Republic.
Mm.
And I was there. It was my first residency in a country that's new for me.
Yeah.
It was a weird experience. It was Christmas. Czech
Right.
Republic at Christmas is wonderful, by the way. And
Right.
so I didn't know what to do, but I wanted to do something more artsy because it was
Mm.
an art residency. Also something more personal. So I chose to do something about music first.
Right.
And something that I did again later, a kind of music generator, let's say, and with kind of a mess for a controller. So it wasn't very visual. So I thought, oh yeah, maybe I should do some VJing while this is generating the music. And yeah, I ended up making this game Nivos. But in my head back then, art needed to be personal.
Right.
So I used for the visual MRIs of my head because I have
Oh,
migraines.
an MRI scan of your own head.
Yeah, exactly. I did a lot of those. I have migraines since I'm five
Right.
years old, so I did a lot of
Yeah.
those. And
Perhaps we
I
could
thought,
see some of the video. Yes, I can see they're up on screen
yeah,
now.
and you can see on screen that it's actually shaders modifying MRIs scans of my
Right.
head while generating music. So we cannot hear
Yeah.
the music, but all this is online on my Vimeo channel or YouTube channel. I can put the links in the chat. And um, yeah, this is pretty much how I ended up making Nivos. And the controller is a mess of buttons, basically. And it's
Right.
just very glitchy, and it's such a, I love this piece, but it's a mess, to be honest. But I love how it's a mess. Like it was the way I was thinking about art back then. Like
Mm.
it needed to be weird and complicated and visual and with sound, and you create stuff and it's personal. and so this project ended up being all that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love mess, so this is this it really speaks to me personally. Like, and like this was so. Were you showing this? What kind of environment were you showing this work in? Was this nightclubs? Was this art galleries?
No, I only showed it as the result of my residency, but
Okay.
this piece was used to make further games I made with clubs.
Mm-hmm.
I made this game called a more playful experience called Bebos. It's
Mm-hmm.
specifically for clubs, and basically in this you have a camera pointed towards the dance floor and a video projection in front of the clubbers so they can see themselves dancing.
Yeah.
And on the screen, there are some shaders. So glitches, let's say, or way to process the video stream that will make them appear differently, like kaleidoscopes and um, weird, colorful glitches made by a good friend of mine called Leon Denise. Is great, quite famous shader artist, and is a demo maker.
Right.
And yeah, this was a performance. So I made a controller for it too, and so I could change the effect on screen depending on the player's behavior. So if I
Mm.
saw that there were doing specific stuff, I could change the type of shaders
I see.
that we're seeing. And so this was clearly fed by my reflections in Niveaus.
Mm,
Um, and I made other games like this. The most, the biggest one, the one I exhibited the most about shaders and visual alterations on video stream, live video stream, is a GPU, glitch processing unit. It's a
yeah.
game I'm exhibiting a lot right now, because it's easy to set up too. And in this game, players can see themselves on screen. It's made with both Olivier and Leon. Leon making the shaders and Olivier making the gameplay programming mainly. And people can see themselves on screen, altered by shaders. And there is this
Right.
big controller with a mess of buttons,
Yeah.
very messy buttons on purpose. And so each button is randomly assigned to a shader. And so people have two video streams, one that is clean and one that is altered by shaders. And they have to reproduce what's happening on
Mm,
the glitchy one with the buttons on the clean one. And there are levels, and this
yeah.
is also nourished, fed by my reflections on Bebos
I
and
see.
Nivos, etc. So it's one of the axes I have on in
Mm.
my game design researches.
But there's, I mean, there is an interesting comparison between, this game, GPU, and the games that kind of led up to it. Is that, because this one, there is an objective here. There is the image on the right, which is your webcam feed,
Yeah.
which is kind of scrambled by all the shaders, and you need to figure out how to combine the different shaders to reach that outcome. Whereas, in Nivos and in Bebos for the nightclubs, these are, there is no specific objective. And does the existence of the objective change how people interact with it? Like, is it, do you feel like, yeah, does the objective do something that wouldn't be there otherwise?
Yeah, clearly the two first ones are more toys, and the GPU is more of a actual game, in the sense
Mm,
that a lot of people will define games by having conditions, at least defeat or victory conditions. Um, it completely changes the way people react.
mm-hmm,
So Nivos is technically the first game I made so I said I have different axes of research that I had since the beginning. Some of them I didn't even realize I had. It was maybe obsessions, and then it turned into, when I started being aware of them, obsessions turned into axes of research, I guess.
right,
um and one of them is what I now call Rosetta Stone to explore, which
right,
are concepts I have where I don't give the grammar of interaction to the players, and they have to find it by themselves. Um, what is interesting in that is, okay, so it could sound like lazy design, but it's really hard to make properly. Um, so basically, the concept of the Rosetta Stone to explore for me is when you have, for example, a controller that is obvious in its primary interaction, like a button, you have to press it.
mm-hmm,
But what will happen in the digital translation of that, you are not sure. And you need to
right,
figure this out to be able to progress. The thing is, when you have a toy, progressing is mastering a type of creation, which can be
yeah,
hard to assess. So it's easier to make Rosetta Stone to explore with games. And this is why Nevos was a bit too much of a mess, that it was a Rosetta Stone to explore, but as a toy. I did that again in 2017. I can talk about this later, but with a game called Contre Ciel. And it worked this time, but it worked because since Nivos, since 2013,
mm,
2014, I was thinking about this. So I had 3 or 4 years of exploring Rosetta Stones to explore, to yeah, build on.
Yeah.
And GPU, by having an actual goal, is my first Rosetta Stone to explore that is actually working as an experience. For
Right.
Bibos, it could be different because we are already in an environment with goals. Like if you're in a club, you want to have fun. So the fun you're looking for is not, I mean, if you don't enjoy the experience, you can keep on having fun with something else. But
Yeah.
a playful installation, it has to work by itself. So yeah, it's a bit different. So yeah, complicated answer for a simple question. I'm sorry for that.
No, but it is interesting. I mean, this idea of a Rosetta Stone is fascinating. This it is a really interesting approach to what games as kind of multimedia objects can do. I mean, you brought up CTRL, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. Close enough.
No, that's okay. Just the or, but like it's, come on, French or is really hard. So.
Yeah, I think it may be several years before I get any good at doing the French R.
It was perfect.
But thank you. But CTRL, like maybe you could talk about that, because that is an interesting experience, and tell us, like, how did this Rosetta Stone idea evolve?
Okay, so CTRL was made for my first solo exhibit. So I was really stressed about this, but good stress. Like it was a really big deal for me. It's like an achievement as an artist, even more as an artist doing video game. Because you're not perceived as legit, basically. I mean, for obvious reasons, I think. Like video game, digital art is already hard, so video game art, come on. And I wanted to make something artsy, building on the reflections I had so far, but that is actually working. It was like, yeah, a lot of stress, but such a good experience. So I ended up making a Rosetta Stone to explore as the final piece to present at this during this solo exhibit.
Right.
And I worked with Olivier, and I told him basically that I wanted something that was obviously a Rosetta Stone to explore, and based on something I really like, which is surrealism. So I wanted to, okay, I will take 2 minutes to talk about this because I never had the opportunity.
While you do that, perhaps Olivier, if you could cue up some of the photos as well, just so we can sort of see that as you're talking about it, that would be delightful.
Yeah, so when there is a new form of art, usually what happens is that there are two waves. During the first wave, artists will try to make stuff in contrast with what happened before, to be to create a break, a rupture, to show how different they are. And then there is a second wave, the one that will bring legitimacy to this, and it will come back to the legacy of different art form. So they will try to reconnect these artists from the second wave. They will try to reconnect with the heritage, the legacy of art in general. And what's happening for me with ALT Control is that we have a lot of rupture and break with art and the history of art. And I think I want to connect a bit to art back again, to enter the second wave. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, this is my thought. So if it doesn't make sense, it's me for you.
I mean, are you talking about, so, because a lot of what we're doing in Alt Control at the moment is we're breaking the controller, we're breaking the keyboard, we're seeing what new things, here's a weird kind of sensor, let's bolt that in, see what it does. And is what you're saying is perhaps that is time for us to start looking at, okay, we've got this kind of library of ways of approaching the controller, of approaching inputs, about approaching the computer. Now let's use that to say something or explore something in a bit more depth. Is it that kind of
Yeah, there is that. So there are two ways of thinking about this, like the connection to the industrial part of video game, but also as an art form. So, like for example, in Contre-Ciel, I was trying to come up with a surreal, so like actually surrealists
Hmm.
inspired experience.
Yeah.
So I was thinking more about the legacy of art, the art legacy to
Right.
connect with. But yeah, it could work maybe with what you're saying too. But in the specific case of Contre-Ciel, I was thinking about surrealism.
Right.
Um,
Oh, so you're wanting to use games and controllers as a way to connect with surrealism as a concept rather than just to connect with the controller itself. You know, it's
Exactly.
yes, I
Exactly.
see.
So not perceive this all control games as, oh, it's weird. You play with insert here a weird controller, but like, oh, this looks like a surrealist experience. And
I see.
this is what I wanted. And so, yeah, in the end, I ended up having this artificial sky hanging from the roof, well,
Mm,
from the ceiling, that's framed in an actual painting frame. And when you look at it, you can, well, basically you can change the weather, the night and day cycle, and the planet from which you observe the sky from, based on
right.
what you play on a keyboard, a piano. And it's a Rosetta Stone to explore, so I won't give the nitty gritty, the rules behind it, because otherwise it spoils the
Ruins the fun.
experience. But the rules, the grammar of interactions, the grammar of interaction, it's based on music theory, which doesn't mean you need to understand music theory to play the game. You can think about it mathematically or through the geometry prism, but it will work nonetheless. I mean, it works even if you don't know anything about anything.
Right.
But I wanted to do this also because it wasn't the first time I worked with music and musical instruments and such, but usually my observation about all control played with musical instruments is that you often ends up with not playing music, like just
Mm,
messing around with an instrument, and it's funny because it's an instrument, but it's not
yeah.
actually producing music, which is a problem for me. So I wanted an experience that if you understand how the system is working, you end up playing actual music, at least following scales or something like
Yeah.
this.
Ah, lovely. And I guess by seeing the response from the projection become more interesting, you know, that will guide you towards exploring more kind of structured musical, like, music theory,
Yeah.
can aligned with music theory kind of ideas. that's
Even
that's
if you
real
don't
fascinating.
even if you don't understand it, I can give an example that's not true in this installation because I thought it was too easy. But just to
Right.
give an example, at some point we had this system where if you played minor chords, it was started raining, for example.
Right.
But you just had to experiment. I mean, you could end up
Mm,
telling yourself, oh, these three keys, they are the rain keys. Some people
right.
think about it this way, which is another part of what interests me in Rosetta Stone to explore, is that it raises suspicion and superstition, to
Yeah.
instigate a form of superstition among the players, which is something I like a lot, because people will
Yeah.
start talking with each other and like try to help each other, but sometimes the advice is like completely false, but it's working. I mean,
Yeah.
technically these three keys, they are the rain keys, but other keys are also the rain keys.
Yes. I mean, it must be fascinating to see that kind of social interaction evolve, and the kind of, communication that people have with each other. But I guess it also kind of expects a certain level of kind of patience and curiosity, which I think is something that we don't often see in a lot of video games in general, let alone alternative controller games, is a kind of expectation of, you know, of sit with something, you won't understand it all first time, sit with it. You know, would you agree with that? Or
I guess it depends a lot on the type of games, like maybe sandbox games are much more like this. I can think of some experiences a bit more like this, like Kerbal Space Program. It's
right.
typically the type of game where you got to sit through it and accept that it will take a long time to understand. But
Yeah.
yeah, I get what you are saying. Like, there is this immediate experience, like, no, let me control something, but which
Yeah.
I understand. Like, we look for this sometimes in video game. It's a world that you can control as opposed to the actual world you don't control. So
Yes.
there is a pleasure in that, or at least a relief in
Mm.
that. But again, it's just one type of experience you can have, and having a system to tame is also interesting. It can bring something new, and maybe
Yeah.
more, less about satisfaction and more about uh and enriching. Can you say that in English, like enrichissement?
I
Like
think
that
so.
that
Yeah.
brings, something that brings something to you.
Yeah. It's
The
less
sentence was
about the
stupid.
it's less about the satisfaction of a problem solved and more about the, you know, the long-term joy of, you know, being able to create and explore. I know what I feel like I'm not finding the words to
Yeah,
explain
or
it, but
even solve, but
yeah.
it's just postponed pleasure, like
Yeah.
Kerbal Space Program. It's still
It
problem solving, but
yeah.
yeah,
It's a
you need
pleasure
to
that
learn
takes
it.
place over a long period of time rather than the instant when you get it right.
Yeah, and enjoying the fact that sometimes the outcomes are silly, and that's fun.
Mm.
This is why I'm talking about Kerbal, because it's exactly that. Like, um it's enjoying to see that. I mean, it's a bit frustrating, but you're building this whole stuff, and then it behaves in such an unexpected silly way, and that's
Yeah.
enjoyable, that's funny. That's, we talked about this a bit, about your performance, like accepting what's coming to you, and not only accepting like in be like in resignation. I mean, accepting and accepting the fun of it. Like,
Yeah.
it's part of life. Sometimes stuff are coming your way, and
The
it's not
unexpected.
what yeah, and it's not exactly what you wanted, but it's okay. It's not like, I mean, I'm not talking about something tragic, of course. Like, we are talking about Kerbal. I mean, or maybe I'm
Depends how
not
attached
serious
you are
enough.
to your
Yeah,
Kerbal
exactly.
people.
Maybe I'm not serious enough, but for this game. But basically, you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
um, yeah, just accepting stuff that are coming to you, and yeah,
Yeah.
trying to not be in control all the time. And I'm saying this, so it's rich coming from me. But I think this is why also I'm trying to do this, is become because I like to be a bit in control, etc. So
Mm.
accepting this, it's a life lesson for myself too.
Yeah. That's really nice. That's really moving. And it kind of fits with the, I don't know, it feels like that really fits the kind of artistic motivations, you know, so that's, I think, is really strong about the work. I mean, I understand that this was not where this journey of exploring the Rosetta Stone ended for you. So you've gone on to explore this idea further, and there's a game you made a couple of years ago called L'Oeuf Sphinx,
Oh yeah,
the
yeah.
Egg Sphinx, or the Sphinx's egg,
Yeah,
would that be?
yeah, the Sphinx egg. Like,
Right.
it's an egg, but also it's a Sphinx.
Ah, I see. I see. And so this is, so it follows this Rosetta Stone idea, and I think,
Yeah.
I mean, you can well, tell us about this. I mean, I guess start off with, what is the thing that you used to control this game?
Yeah, not an egg and not a
Not an egg.
Sphinx. How disappointing. Um
That's right. I've got eggs at home. It's fine.
okay, cool. I don't have Sphinx, but I can make an effort and try to find one. So yeah, it's again a game I made, played with a musical instrument. So it's a game that is not based on screen. Instead, we have a cube, an enigmatic cube, with kind of like light mazes on three sides. And depending on what you play on this instrument, which is called the metallophone, it's like a xylophone, but xylo means wood and metallo means metal. So
I have no
metallophone is a
idea.
xylophone in okay, okay. You have actually some of those, but based on bone, coming back from the prehistoire, like cavemen,
Prehistory.
etc. Prehistory, yeah. So yeah, metallophone is a xylophone in metal,
Right.
and you have to solve the riddle on each side of the cube to open it and reveal an egg. But the animal inside the egg depends on how you solve the puzzle, because you have several
Ah.
ways to solve the puzzle. And again, Rosetta Stone to explore means
Mm.
there isn't the grammar of interaction is not given to the players, but it's based on music theory again, like in Contre-Ciel.
Yes.
Except Contre-Ciel, it's not an actual game in the sense that it comes back always to the same state. So if you don't touch Contre-Ciel, it comes back to the basic default mode. So
Yeah.
it's more about trying to navigate in space and time based on the music you play. While on Love Sphinx, I took the easier way of going directly for a game. It's
Yes.
easier. And yeah, it was a hard game to make. Not from a game design perspective, even though from a technical perspective, there were a lot of challenges. I made a making of for this game. It's on my YouTube channel. So people can see that if they want to see all the problems we had with the techniques. But um, it was hard because it was in 2020. And
Yes.
this is the game. Like every alt control devs are there. We have the game that was sacrificed by
Yep.
COVID. So
Yep.
this was my sacrifice to the COVID god.
Right.
Um,
But at least
we
you did get to realize it. You
yeah,
know, it is
yeah,
finished. And have you been able to exhibit it?
yes, not a lot because obvious reasons, but yeah, so the art residency, because I'm working a lot in art residency. I don't do game jams anymore, very few. I did way too much. I'm working in art residency now, but um I feel like I'm bragging saying this, but it's cool. I
No.
mean, it's natural way in alt control. You start with game jams and then you go to more art
And it
residencies.
feels like the art residencies have been an important part of your career, not just financially, but also creatively.
Yeah, I mean, it's an environment that gives you, yeah, first the funds to work.
Mm.
Let's be honest, like at least the materials and the place to stay, but mainly a time and space dedicated to that. And this time and space is not like a cave or a basement, a room with sneakers all around, and you only eat this for 2 days, you know. So yeah, that's really cool to work. But that's art residency where I made Love Sphinx was postponed uh, twice, I think. I
Right.
managed to flip in between two lockdown, and it happened, but it was shorter than expected. But it was else that, or it was postponed indefinitely. So we chose to do this. The place I worked in, that they did everything they could to make it happen, but yeah, COVID,
Mm.
come on, it was so hard. And I managed to exhibit it there, and then again at a mini maker fair. And yeah, I managed to show it also in a festival at a distance. So with Olivier, we made a version that was playable at a distance, so people could come on Zoom and play with their
Ah.
musical instrument.
Oh,
Um,
lovely.
yeah, that was cool because basically you can play this game with any instrument that has two octaves. So a
Right.
ukulele can work. So
Yeah.
it
So
needs,
unlike Contra-CL used inputs directly from the piano as in
yeah,
electronic inputs, whereas this, you've got a microphone
yeah,
pointing at the metallophone,
yeah,
and it's as long as the microphone picks up sounds, it's going to interpret them. Is that
yeah.
correct? Yeah.
Contre-Ciel technically is based on MIDI control, so
Right.
it's easier to have actual specific inputs,
Mm.
meaning that technically and by we, I mean I designed and Olivier made it.
Yes.
We managed to make something a bit more complex, which is understanding scales and stuff like this,
Mm.
because we can stock the inputs we have and try to interpret
Yes.
what happened in the past X seconds, and
Yeah.
then try to say, okay, this is a E minor chord, whatever. And in Love Songs, it's a bit different. We use a microphone, so what we have is an audio signal coming through, and we analyze it with an FFT, which is a fast Fourier transform,
Right.
which is quite common when analyzing sound, and we have to deduce a frequency from that, which works better with instrument with pure or merely pure,
Mm.
almost pure sound. This is why metallophone is perfect, because
Yes.
the note is not too there is not too much noise in it. It's
Yeah.
almost only signal. And
Yeah.
but yeah, it's working with other instruments. Voice control is lame, to be honest, because
Right.
human voice is way too, there are too many harmonics in this. But yeah, so we managed to make it through COVID, and actually, as compared to many of my alt control devs, fellow devs, I've been quite lucky. I mean, I had still some exhibits stuff happening online. I started making alt control at home. I
Mm.
made game jams. Also, I was teaching, so I still had some stable incomes coming, less, of course, because my main activity is art and alt control making, but
Yeah.
still some. So I managed to pay the bills at least.
Yeah.
I
But
wasn't that sad. Honestly, I was one of the lucky ones.
yes, but this, I mean, coming up with the, the idea for doing alt control at home, and that was a very important thing to be doing in the pandemic, when it during lockdowns, to be able to continue your practice. But you've also been able to bring it to other people. You ran a couple of at-home game jams
Oh yeah,
for making alt controls. Is that right?
yeah. So uh, kind of out of the blue, I decided to make a game jam on itch. That
Mm-hmm.
I called the alt control at home jam, because I was frustrated that no alt control was happening, and then it was great. So we did another one a few months after that with Thorsten, the curator of the Amaze and founder of the Amaze Festival. Someone I mean, I love Thorsten. I owe him. I don't know if I owe him, but at least he was one of the people that exhibited my work quite early on and in my career. So anyway, and so we made one for the Amaze Festival, and we had good, really great games there from developers I respect a lot. It was cool. And so I participated in these jams, because come on, you don't organize a jam online and don't participate in the jam. What kind of person does this? So I made 2 games that I
Mm-hmm.
managed to show and exhibit. So that was cool. I made with Olivier, I made Keyboard Landscaper. It's so I'm working right now a lot on hijacking and repurposing traditional controllers. That's something I
Yeah.
love to do. So I'm working on that right now, and it's coming from COVID. So Keyboard Landscaper is rethinking the keyboard, but as tone matrix. So tone matrix, or the most famous one is one called the Tenorion. It's a Japanese instrument made by a game designer called Toshio Iwai. He
Right.
made Electroplankton
All
on
right.
Nintendo DS. And so before making Electroplankton, which for people that don't know this game but play Super Smash, there is a level based on Electroplankton. It's the one with the leaves, and when you jump on them, it changes the color and produces a musical note. So anyway, this guy, he made a musical instrument called the Tenorion. It's matrix of buttons,
Mm-hmm.
and when you press one, it will play the sequence in loop. So if you press one button, it will lead and make this note
Right.
happen on every
Yeah.
cycle. And so you can make music like this. And to make it work, it's always following a scale, predefined scale. So you are sure that what you're playing will sound okay. So I decided to understand my keyboard, think about my keyboard as a tone matrix. So you have
Right.
on the side a tone matrix, and it works exactly like kind of like a tenory on. You can change the octave by pressing up and down.
Hmm.
And yeah, basically that's the most important part. And then there is a visual interpretation of the music you're playing. So the first one is changing scales. What I choose to do is always work with pentatonic scales, so scales with
Right.
5 notes, because this way you are sure that it always sounds nice. And each pentatonic scale, minor scale, because I prefer minor scales, because I'm so much a goth, emo goth. No, but there isn't a kind of nostalgia or whatever coming from
Yes,
this.
yes.
And so each scale is interpreted as a landscape, a type of landscape. And every time a note is played, something will grow from it. So it will be always be vegetation or maybe rocks, minerals, something natural like this. And depending on the vegetation you have, some animals can appear on screen.
Right.
So we did this with Olivier for the Al Control at Home Jam. It was
Yeah.
really fun and poetic, etc. And then I decided to make. I didn't before that. It was 2020. Before that, I didn't make a game by alone for a while, maybe 2 years. So I wanted to make something alone too. So I made Good Soup MF,
Hmm.
which is a game repurposing, hijacking, let's say, or hacking gamepad,
Yeah.
and you play with chopstick. So you have to manipulate, handle the joystick with the chopstick. That's how I
Yes.
talk about this game. Like you have to move the joystick with the chopsticks, and then you
Yes.
have to feed a character some worms, like it's a bit psychedelic, before
Ah,
the countdown hits 0. And
right.
some of these worms, they are colorful. So when you eat them, you are drugged, and the world appears like moving and
Okay.
yeah, distorted, etc. So these were the games I made during COVID, of course.
Yeah.
Like the it was made in game jam, so
Mm.
smaller games, but it was a way to stay alive during COVID, and it was a lot
Yes.
of fun. I'd love to make this game jam again. I don't know if some people would be interested in participating in that, but I would be, so
Yeah.
I can make the
I would
game
be
jam
up
and
for it.
participate in that. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So we have 2 people.
All right. Let's do it. Who wants to join us in the chat? Let us know if you want to join us. I mean, yeah. Let's make this
Absolutely.
happen again. But
I'd
I
love
like,
to do this.
I mean, I kind of, because it's not only you who are making these things as well. You're also teaching people how to make these things. Like
Oh
I
yeah,
know that you do
a lot.
regular workshops. I mean, I think just this weekend you were away teaching a workshop. Um, and everybody should follow Tatiana's Twitter, which is up. If I point in the right direction, is up next to her name, and hopefully I pointed in the right direction. To see the photos of the stuff that gets created at these things. And who are the people who come along to your workshops?
Okay, so just last week I was a mentor in All Control Game Jam. I was ending up monthly, well, a workshop with high school students that was staggered through several months, and had a 1 week intensive All Control workshop with graphic design students. So this is my life. Like, I'm spending a lot of time teaching other people how to do this, or mentoring jams, or mainly organizing workshops. Workshop always work kind of the same way. I start with my game design frameworks for all control. It's a way for me to use the participants. We are, they know this as guinea pigs
Mm-hmm.
for my frameworks. They know this, so it's okay. And then we do all control, and by the end, what's cool is that most of the time I have to grade them because schools want to, or the context mostly
Right.
want to, but I don't like to do this. And
Yeah.
instead we can, well, let other people play the games
Mm.
and see what happens, which is the best way to assess the quality of an experience. Of course, there are nuances to that, but basically that's what I'm doing. And yeah, every time I have this, I'm trying to, because the problem with alt control is that it's really hard to diffuse, to spread, if you
Mm.
don't have an exhibit. Sorry.
That's all right.
It's
You
okay.
okay?
um I'm talking a lot. um Hopefully that's all this is about.
Oh, this is
So
exactly why you're here. So, talk away.
cool.
But do take a
um
glass of water if you need one.
Thank you. But yeah, I'm trying to always make videos and put pictures online, so at least other people gets to see a video of people
Mm.
playing and what happened. Because it's a bit frustrating to work intensively on an out control game and then poof, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yes.
That's a bit frustrating, especially when you are not used to exhibit those.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm my Twitter and Instagram are basically filled with this kind of recap of
Yeah.
workshops, etc. And so to answer your question about the audience, I'm doing workshops with kids
Hmm.
in mainly in middle schools, sometimes in high schools and primary education. Do you call it that way? Elementary.
Primary,
No,
yeah.
before
Primary here in the
primary. Yeah.
UK.
Okay. Yeah. Before middle school, but mainly middle school. So for this, the context is that usually it's publicly funded. So we have something about prevention. In France, we have funds dedicated to the most difficult, popular areas that have
Hmm.
problems with school dropouts.
Right.
And so to prevent this, they can have artistic interventions and stuff like this. So I'm part of this, and I'm using alt control as and video game design in general as a way to connect with the the primary teaching they have. So sometimes it's made in association with the math teacher,
Right.
sometimes the literature teacher, etc. And I always connect this to these teachers. So for example, I work a lot with physical education teachers, and we
Oh,
work
right.
a lot on street games
Yeah.
with them. So yeah, we create sportive activities basically. With literature teachers, we will make games that were interpreting a book, like
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of dystopia stuff, based of dystopic fictions, etc. For math in France, programming is part in middle school is taught through math classes.
Right.
So of course they make games in this context. Sometimes we use geometry to make the controllers, etc. And then I
Mm.
teach mainly in college, of course. So in video game school, basically I work a lot in video game schools in France.
Right.
To make to teach alternative controller game design, and not just make it a workshop, and in the sense that not just like, oh, here are some
Mm.
buttons and Arduinos, let's make stuff, guys, but with actual game design workshop. This is mainly made through my university research status, let's say, but because of my university teacher status, I managed to bring a certain um, legit aura to alt control in colleges, which
Yes.
helps me make it more visible, give it exposure, and
Mm.
also a legitimacy that's welcomed. I hope so.
Yeah.
And sometimes I work with art students, like traditional art students. I love these classes because these students, they bring like such a fresher new perspective on art control. It's
Right.
always so surprising. And yeah, that's the main context I work in, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, do the art students kind of approach it differently because they're they don't have expectations of what a game should be, or is it, is it something else? What is it that
Okay, so no, that's a really good question. Why do I like it so much? Because I could enjoy kids more in the sense that it has a social power to it, or a social impact to it that is the biggest. I mean, these are kids that don't see a future at all. Like the future is probably working a job they hate just to have money, and you bring a new perspective to this, so that's cool. But what I really like is seeing ALT control in its artistic potential, and meaning that each artist can have an identity. You know what I mean?
Yes.
In art, it's a bit different. Like you have topics that you focus on, etc. I mean, in traditional art, you usually focus on some topics and sometimes even some mediums. So when I arrive in art school, the goal is for them to appropriate this new medium they don't know, which is ALT control video games, and to put their identity into it, meaning that the end result will not be like, I can give you the difference with video game school and game design school. In game design school, you will have expectations about what people think you want as a teacher. Like, okay, but what's a good ALT control? In art, there is no question about what's good art. I mean, it makes no sense. And not in 2022. I mean, it's not Michelangelo, like we don't assess art this way. So it's all about what they do with their own sensitivity, with their own identity. And you can end up with, so 2 years ago, I was teaching at the Beaux-Arts, which is the traditional classical arts in Poitiers. And I was, there was this wonderful young artist, focused on not only feminism, but more specifically about feminine orgasm, female orgasm. And so she wanted to do something that is that's going in this direction, like talk about female orgasm through ALT control, and not, because she's working on this, you don't end up with an experience that's just a simulation. Like these students, they don't think about simulations, like, oh yeah, let's talk about female orgasm, and we make like a vagina, and here you go, and the clitoris, and here you go. No, there was a lot of reflection to it, and that's really interesting. What we can show on screen is this year video I made based on the students I had this year. So it's not an environment where I teach a lot, but I love it. Like, it gives you results. Even I get out with a new perspective when I end up the kind of class. I have new perspective on ALT control. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's I mean, that is, it must be such a wonderful kind of inspiring experience, and like it's really valuable. You are giving something, you're giving a lot of work, a lot of energy, a lot of your expertise, but to be able to get something back from that as well and be inspired yourself is really special. So you talked and this has come up in the, when you're talking about the workshops, about this idea of repurposing things, and I can see a little smile appear in your face, but I think that means you know what we're going to talk about now, which is your most recent piece, a game called Pied de Bébé.
Absolutely.
Tell us all about Pied de Bébé.
Okay, so this is my last game installation. I made it with Olivier, as usual. As I said, is my usual partner in crime. So I've been doing ALT control for 10 years now. And I have to admit, like, just messing around with some buttons and joysticks, sometimes I'm a bit jaded. I mean, I've seen a lot of them, especially because of the workshops, and and the teaching. So and being part of different initiatives like the YouTube channel, this Twitch channel, I mean the show, the Out Control show, etc. So I've seen a lot of Out Control. So what I'm trying to do is for each of my project to have a design and or a technical challenge to spice up thing a bit. And for Pied Bébé, it was it was made for an event in France called Ignaroff, which means Foraine à l'envers, which basically means fun fair backward.
Right.
And the constraints we had was it's about pub games, bar games, sports in bar, in pubs, etc. So we choose to reinterpret football.
Mm-hmm.
And what we never call football in France, we always call it a baby foot or a baby foot with a strong and thick French accent. And so I translated it directly. It's pied bébé, baby foot. Well, the foot of the baby.
Literally a baby's foot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so starting from here, I mean, starting from this almost that joke with I thought that maybe it was good to make a game that's basically a glorified joke. So this game, like really, I weaved this game design on joke after joke. Anyway, I ended up,
and I think on the screen, hopefully now we can see the baby's feet actually being used.
So yeah, you play with actual baby's feet, and these tentacles I always have are actually coming from this game anyway. And so I was still on this surrealist vibe. So I wanted the graphic design to be based on collage art with a more like a traditional take, modern take on like Monty Python's kind of collage, or maybe for a more recent reference, Syriac, for people who know his work. And so how do you translate it to translate this in the physical world? Well, by hacking toys. And so we hacked toys, we did some circuit bending, and also some like we rework the circuits inside the toys. So when you trigger an effect in the game in Unity, which is the engine we use for this game, it will trigger the physical effect of the toy on the table. So for example, you can call a T-Rex, a dinosaur, to burn your opponent's arms and legs, and the real dinosaur on the table will roar and blow smokes and move, etc. So yeah, it's a mix of collage art and toy hacking.
Yeah, and so the T-Rex toy that you used for that was that already set up to kind of move and make roar noises when you like pressed a button or something, and you've hacked it so that now a game controls the signal that makes it roar and things. Right, I see.
Exactly. We used a microcontroller, and so the microcontroller will just send a signal to the same circuit that is programmed initially to release the smoke, etc. Yeah,
it's so fun and kind of playful, and I think there is a lovely kind of playfulness in just the the style of what it is. In just being itself, it exhibits a kind of a real kind of spirit of play, a real spirit of no boundaries. I mean, I know the film Toy Story. There's the quote unquote evil kid next door who takes apart his toys and reassembles them into new things. And I remember seeing interviews with the creators of Toy Story saying that Sid was their favorite character because he exhibits the spirit that they want to have of pure creativity.
Yeah.
So to them, he wasn't a villain. And I think that's a sort of similar thing to what you're doing is.
Absolutely. I'm the mean kid in Toy Story.
Yeah. And proving that is a good thing to be.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone should be the mean kid in Toy Story. I think that's like, yeah, my philosophical take on life.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I actually, so people just saw some images coming from the making of Kid Baby, which is on YouTube. Um, and what's funny for me here is that one of the reflections we had was that one that we wanted this to be the kind of storytelling, the experience to be the kind of storytelling you can have from a child. Like, a child will see a dinosaur and a police car and a Barbie. And yeah, sure, it's the story of a Barbie riding a dinosaur against the cops. And that all makes sense, no problem. And we wanted this to have this kind of vibe. So yeah, this mismatching that in the end makes sense because of the context. That's something we were looking for actively in this. And this
Yeah.
is working. Like, the game is actually working very well. Like, we had a lot of exhibits, kids love it, they don't find it weird, because we did some weird stuff. We didn't have like kids in mind specifically for this game. Like, when you mark a goal, there is a servo motor, so it's not always working because of the weight of the head of the baby. But
Right.
yeah, when you mark a goal, it will the head will turn like
Right.
like the exorcist, like something like this. So, but kids don't find it, like, they find it funny. So
Yeah.
okay, actually kids are mean because they tried to tear off the baby's head on the goal. Yeah, true story. True
Yeah.
story. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, I think we are starting to reach the end of our time together on this stream. But I understand that you do have some things to show us on the
Yeah.
camera. And as always, we have our interactive game for the audience. So, audience, this week, the bot that usually operates this has been replaced with this kind of fleshy looking Alistair bot with some pieces of card. So the game is going to be that Tatiana is going to be challenged at the end of the show to come up with a new video game or controller made using objects and items that you type into the chat. So if you type anything into the chat, I will add it to one of these little cards. We'll shuffle them up at the end and we will pick out 5 of them, and it will be up to you to come up with the concept for a new game or controller. So audience, if you want to write some objects on some cards, or write down some objects into the chat, I'll add them to the cards, and then we will see what new creation Tatiana will come up with. Now, while I was giving that explanation, I see, Tatiana, you've gone off and brought over a suitcase of what is in this magnificent box of mystery.
So I wanted to show Pied Bibi, but it's at Olivier's place right now, so complicated. But I bring Atsuno because Atsuno, it has 6 prototypes before having the one that actually worked all the time, and also can go in the I always forget this word, like the plane. There is the cabin, and then sometimes you put the luggage under the plane. How's that place called?
Got the baggage hold, I guess.
Yeah, okay. Well, this place. So we needed to put Atsuno, like in under the plane.
Yeah.
That's, and so we managed to make it fit this little case, which is actually I say we with Guillaume Noisette, which is the wonderful developer that makes this game with me. So which is a bag, a computer bag. And so it fits it all, and I didn't open it in like a year. So if suddenly there is a spider coming out of it and you hear me scream and I don't come back, well, it's
at least we know the spiders had a lot of fun playing the game.
Exactly. And it's okay, you'll see me next month anyway. So inside of it, we managed to make the 2 controllers fit and fit, not feet. Feet is a human limb. And so we have these boxes. So it's quite big, actually, as you can see. to fit the button. It was made with laser cutter, as you can tell by the aliasing
Yeah.
here. And then you have some straps, and yeah, this is the controller.
And so that's one of
Um,
those would strap to maybe my forearm, for
yeah,
example.
I can make a full simulation. Like this is like this kind of TV channel where they try to sell you stuff to their
Right,
show,
yeah.
whatever. Yeah. So for the modest sum of of this, like only for $1,000, you can end up with this. No, yeah, I don't know if this one is the arm or yeah, this is the arm. You have a collar by limb, so it
Right.
helps us know where to put this. And
Yes.
but usually we are the one to put it on people's body.
Okay. Yeah.
This is why I'm not exhibiting Atsuno as much as I used to, because it requires me to be on site. And
I see. Yeah.
But yeah, basically you can strap it that way, and then you just squeeze it, and yeah, you have a button. Ta-da!
Right.
No, that's pretty much all.
And
It's
so
actually quite easy to install, so that's cool.
And there's 5 of these for each player.
Yeah, and then they have this microcontroller strapped on their back.
Right.
And this is where the
Are you able to lift that up, perhaps?
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, there we go.
It's just for me to see. Okay.
These are all trade secrets, folks.
Exactly. As you can see, this is the secret tape we put on it because it wasn't fixed enough. And here is the secret screw to make the controller fixed on the secret wood.
Yep.
So yeah, this is Atsuno. And yeah, I actually have a bunch of other stuff, but I can see we have a lot of words yet. Okay, this is a mess now. So now I will live in the mess, but I will move the mess around depending on my needs.
Is it all wireless, by the way? Is it so? Obviously, there's wires connecting up the arm patches to the central unit. Is the central unit wireless, or is that wired to something as well?
It's wired because of the power, but we could make the game powerless. Not powerless, wireless. I don't have the secret of making electronics work without power yet. I'd be rich by now if I had. But yeah, no, it could be wireless. But today we could make it wireless for sure.
Yeah. But I guess that was the limitations of, because that was, almost 10 years ago you made that. And I guess there's kind of equipment, I certainly started exploring using Bluetooth and Arduinos and 7 years ago and found it to be very unreliable and sort of didn't do anything with wireless for years since, because I've kind of been scared off of it.
Yeah, and even if it existed, there is also the accessibility of the codes, etc. Nowadays, you can find a code for Bluetooth stuff with an ESP32 quite easily. But 10 years ago, it was kind of the secret of the gods,
right?
Like much more, at least. Also, yeah, I mean, maybe on some forums and websites or whatever, but nowadays, electronics is much more accessible. Even buying an Arduino board, you type this in Amazon and you have all sorts of price, etc. But you didn't have this back then.
Which is amazing because 10 years ago you would have been saying this. You'd be saying very similar things, that this is way more accessible than it was 10 years prior. So if you think about the kind of things that we'll be saying are so accessible, in 10 years time, things that we think are quite difficult now might actually be, quite straightforward. So, I don't know. I'm having a sort of, that thing where you ever think about time and space and you lean back in your chair and the stars stream past your head. That's kind of where I am right now.
Okay.
Anyway, I see you've got the black box.
This has a name, I think this is the Sublime experience.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And this is black box, nothing to do with the Sublime experience, and it's broken right now.
Right.
But it's way easier. Yeah, it's not so Arduino was with a microcontroller, so like Arduino Mega board. This one is the simplest type of controller I can make. So it's based on a keyboard encoder. And
Ah,
if you don't know what it is, which I doubt a lot, I'm not talking about you, Alistair, but in general. But if you by any chance don't know, my YouTube channel explains the difference between the two of those quite well. So
that's
yeah,
right. Where can
and
we
the
find your
hanging
YouTube
stuff.
channel, by the way?
Oh, it's youtube.com. The channel is Megbird, MECHBIORD.
Fantastic.
Um, it's a very, very humble Out Control YouTube channel, but doing my best to make Out Control have more exposure.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean,
Thank
and they're fantastic videos as well, incredibly well
you.
produced.
Thank you. I'm doing my best here. And so it's big. It's quite big. Also, we can use it as a hat, but my head will go through. If I, oh, I could, no, actually,
Oh,
I can. Okay. So I feel like it's I'll control Silent Hill, cross Silent Hill.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we may have a new
Pyramid
game on our
head.
hands here.
Exactly. Exactly. So I will stay like this for
Yeah.
the rest of the show.
And so this was for a kind of rhythm action game, wasn't it?
Yeah. So you don't wear it on the head. You actually play normally like normal people. And yeah, you have, it's not exactly DDR, etc. It's a choreography, geometric choreography that's on screen, and you have to remember it to reproduce it. So it's more like Space Channel 5 with geometry, something like this.
Right. I see. Yeah. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to play that one. I remember we were out
Really?
on we did an Amaze event together a few years ago, and you had it there and I got to play it. I
What year? What
Oh,
year?
2016, I think it was the Abu Dhabi one.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And we played your Sonic game in the hotel room.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. Okay.
And we
Should I
got a
show
request.
something more or should
Yes,
we make
yes.
the okay?
Yes.
So final stuff I prepared is I found back most people, well, of course, most
My
people
earphones just fell out. I was getting to
the
Sorry, could you
problem.
repeat that?
So this is Tango, and most people, even people that know me, I've never seen Tango before. So Tango was my final master year project, master one project, master two was
Right.
another game. And so it's a game played without I'm hiding the light. Played without screen and without sound. And now it's starting to get weird. So
Right.
inside these little pillows, I'm
Mhm.
trying to aim for the camera. You
Yeah.
have vibrating motors and pressure sensors, and it's called Tango because there are 5 of these pillows. You have to place your hands on them, and the more a pillow is vibrating, the more you have to press on it. So it's a really personal, intimate experience because there is no sound, no screen, no visual, etc. So you just have to focus on the physical sensation you have. And yeah, this was my master project, master one project, basically. And it's
Right.
still working. And even I was surprised, but it's still working.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what sensors and what have you got in there to create the vibrations? What have you got in there to detect the sensory inputs?
The sensory input is detected through a pressure sensor.
Right.
It's a type of sensor that it's flat, but it looks kind of like a lollipop with
Okay.
a circle and then 2 bars. And
Right.
it's based on, like most sensors, on a electric resistance. So the more
Okay.
you press it, the less electricity passes, let's say, so the more resistance you have. So then with a microcontroller, you can read the numbers that's coming the signal.
Right. Yeah.
And it's if it's big, you're not pressing it basically. And then for vibration, this is the same type of vibrating motors you have in a phone. So not the one from a gamepad. Gamepads are solenoid. Anyway, it's with a weight that's
So
turning
so in a
super fast.
gamepad, you've got like a motor which drives a weight round, but the weight
Exactly.
is lopsided, so it
Exactly.
shakes.
And
Yeah.
it's a bit different here, but yeah. this is it. And my cable mess. And I didn't know how to do electronics properly back then. Not that I know now, but it's better.
And what? Yeah, just I guess my final question is that is just so what was it if you quote unquote didn't know how to use electronics back then? What were you using? What was the kind of, I guess the equivalent, the microcontroller, the equivalent of like an Arduino or something that you were using? What?
No, but I knew enough to actually work with Arduino.
Oh, okay, I see.
I was just making messy stuff, but no. So my chance was that my video game school, they didn't teach us electronics, but we had enough technical teaching for me to end up knowing my way around Unity, my way around Unreal. I'm not saying I was good at it, but I mean, I could work with it or against it a lot, and nowadays that's way better, basically because I tried so many technologies, different technologies, that you end up understanding stuff that are not universal but common to many different technologies, whether it's game engines or well, just engines and programming a language in general. Also, the studies I made in Montpellier in art, they had this approach of use whatever you want to get whatever you want. We don't care about technology, like, so really helped me not putting technology on such a pedestal and accept that, yeah, I just need a tool to do my stuff. And so I worked a lot with processing for a while, which was much more accessible. I prefer Java. I mean, it's simple, strict, it's formal. I don't know how to call this, but like, I don't know, as a structure, it was a good way to learn for me scripting. While game engines, it's a mess. Like it's all over the place, and you can do 3D and 2D and 2D and sound, and you can have 1,000 ways to make, and processing the minimalism of it. Like, it helped me a lot. So but no, it was based on Arduino, and I can do programming and electronics. Honestly, I'm not saying out control is not feasible without some basics, but I'm kind of saying it actually, just the basics, at least not being shy of technology, like just trying stuff. It's a bit necessary, I'd say, just not shying away from the basics.
I guess a kind of a fearlessness to be able to pick up something you don't know and go, I'll figure out how to use it. Yeah.
And having experience intentions, meaning that even if the technology, you cannot make it work, that's okay, because your intention is for an experience, not using a technology. So if you want to make a VR game and you're not able to work around VR, that's a problem. But if you want to make an immersive experience and VR is not working, it's okay, you have other solutions. So having an experience intention rather than a technology intention helps a lot working around that.
That makes a lot of sense. That really does.
I just saw what the What Festival wrote down, like, to make a version of Black Box that's played on the head. And I love it. Like, it's a mix between Black Box and Hit Me from Cahob Abbey. I'd love that. Yeah, definitely a really good idea.
Really there's something kind of strange about the kind of almost like a kind of prisoner's helmet kind of thing. There was just some game years ago, I remember, as a games exhibition, it was where they were giving out these promotional kind of safes, cardboard safes that you could stick on your head, and it had a flap on the moment, so it looked like your head was stuck inside a safe. And there were people walking around with cardboard safes on their heads. I can almost imagine something like that, is that the helmet is on, and now I am just a video game controller. I'm no longer a human being. There's something.
I love the idea. Yeah, there is something to
slightly creepy about it.
Yeah, now that I know how to make Bluetooth stuff, I could make this wireless. Anyway, we'll make our ALT control game after the show. That's fine.
Yeah. So speaking of making an ALT control game, I have 10 things written on cards numbered 1 to 10. So
another one just ended like
I
a
know.
dinosaur pajamas, PG's suit.
I know. I'd ruin the game if I told you what number I'd written on it.
Okay, okay,
I've added that one.
okay,
So let's have. I want a number between 1 and 10 from you.
okay. 7.
Number 7, a vocoder.
Okay.
A vocoder. All right. Let's see. Okay. Let's have another number.
Okay.
There we go.
3.
Number 3 is ground beef.
Okay.
Ground beef.
Ground beef and a vocoder. Okay. Number 10.
Number 10 is a dinosaur pajamas suit.
Okay. Okay.
So so far you've got a vocoder, ground beef, a dinosaur pajama suit. Do you want one more?
Ground beef, a
Ground beef,
dinosaur
vocoder,
pajama
dinosaur
suit, and a vocoder. Usually we do 5 words.
Usually
right?
we do 5, yeah.
Okay, so I need 2 more. God, this game is hard. Okay. Okay. I will go for, I don't know, 4.
I'm enjoying the tension of this. So here's number 4. Card number 4 is an egg.
Okay. An egg and ground beef. That's
An
cool.
egg and ground beef.
Yeah, we
kind
can
of bind, make a burger.
Yeah, exactly. Or a tartare.
Ooh.
Yeah, absolutely.
tartare.
So I don't have a game, but I have the menu for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have some lunch.
A game you can eat. What's your final number? Ash is saying don't say 1. That feels like Ash wants us to choose 1.
Don't say 1. Okay.
Do you take that risk?
Okay, let's go with 1.
Number 1 is a human baby.
Okay.
So we have, I'll type these into the chat. Because otherwise I'll get hard to see. So
yeah, I need to write this down.
Vocoder.
Yeah.
A dinosaur pajama suit.
Yeah. Ground beef.
Ground beef. An egg and a human baby. There we go. Alternative recipes. We'll do that. We should do a cooking show as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If I don't find an idea for a game, I'll end up with a recipe. Okay. So what can you do with, vocoder, it's interesting because it turns a signal into something else. So from an information perspective, it's interesting. Like it can turn something into something hard to decode. Okay, that's cool. Dinosaur pajama suit. I know why it's here. Like there are pictures of me in those online.
Right.
Okay, that's cool because you can fill it up with a ground beef. Okay. I'm starting to have something. So you have a human baby inside a giant dinosaur pajama suit, and it's filled with ground beef, and you have to help this baby out of the PG.
Okay.
And to do this, you have to encourage it through because it needs to get up to get out through the mouth, and so it enters the other way, and so it needs to get like it's an inverted baby. Like usually baby they come out, but here this time they come out. Is
this a game to be played by a real life baby, or is this are we talking about, is this a digital representation of a baby?
So I think it depends on the laws in your country.
Okay.
But as the What Festival is saying, maybe it could be used to train parents to be, because this will be their life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And so they have a vocoder to encourage the baby out of the mouth of the dinosaur that's filled with ground beef. But I'm missing the egg here. So I don't know, like maybe, oh no, they have to keep the baby inside the PG filled with ground beef. So every time the baby is trying to leave, they can throw eggs at it and, and also yell through a vocoder to make it stay inside the PG filled with ground beef. I think my game, and this is atrocious.
I mean, talking about surrealists and this, you know, this is
exactly.
the weirdest the suggestion for a game we've ever had on the show.
Yeah, this is atrocious, but I'm sticking with it. Like this is my actual game, and then I will have to do this in Photoshop for the end of the show. As usual, I will have to put the baby inside the dinosaur suit filled with ground beef, and some atrocious parents trying to throw eggs at it while screaming in a microphone with a vocoder, and I'm happy with that. Like, that's my game.
Oh, you should be. It's magical. I mean, it's nightmarish, but it's magical.
Exactly. It's nightmare materials. I'm aiming for Halloween with that game.
Yeah. Halloween's a big marmite. Big. I have no idea what word I was going to say.
But marmite sounds
sure,
like
sure. It's a big marmite. Yeah. It's a big marmite.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. And, you know, and what a wild and bizarre note to end the show on. I think that's fantastic. Yeah. I love it.
No, but I think it looks like me, so that's fine. It sounds like
excellent,
the kind of person I am. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't ever be normal. The world's got far too much normal in it already.
Yeah, normal, like too easy.
Yeah.
I think that's so profound. We cannot go more in depth here, so we have to stop the show now.
Yeah. So, Tatiana,
in a dinosaur PG.
Oh, we've got the photo up on the screen.
Yeah,
I just saw that it was a little delayed.
PG.
So that's your prototype.
Yeah,
that's a prototype.
It's at the festival. Yeah.
I see.
Okay, let's end here. Like, it's getting weirder and weirder. This has to stop before turning into another show. So yeah, I
agree. But Tatiana, thank you so much for this interview. Pleasure. This has been absolutely fascinating. Is there anything else that you'd like to you'd like to tell the audience about? Anything you're working on, or where can they find out more about your work and your projects?
I'm working on out-control game design framework in my PhD, and I'm making exhibits all the time. But right now I'm exhibiting in Paris, so I just ended up an exhibit and starting another one in a week. But they're all in Paris. So if you're in France, you can have a look at my YouTube channel, not YouTube channel, Twitter. Oh my God, it's late. So on my social media accounts, you have all these infos and info in general. And you can find me on, well, my website is quite updated. So it's mechbird.fr, mechbird.fr. And everything online about me is mechbird, basically. So Twitter, not Instagram. Instagram, it's my name, but otherwise it's mechbird. And if you don't find me with all this, I don't know what to say. But yeah, I'm easy to find.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for doing this show once again. Stay tuned to the IndieCade channel. There is more programming coming up. So on Wednesdays at 3 o'clock Pacific time is Korean drive time. So they'll be trying out new games. And so you can see that here on the channel. So that should be in about an hour's time. Also, every Wednesday is the Beyond Screen show. So there are shows for alternative controllers, that's us, but there's also shows for immersive theater, for escape rooms, and for something else which I've forgotten. But you can come here to the IndieCade channel every Wednesday evening, and there will always be fascinating content for you to enjoy. And of course, in the Twitch archives for this channel, you can have a look back and look at previous interviews under the Beyond Screens label. Thank you once again, everyone in the audience, for joining us. Thank
Yeah.
you, Tatiana, for being a fantastic guest this week. I hope you've enjoyed being in the guest chair.
Yeah, now I get to know what the guests are going through. Maybe I will be a bit more nice, a bit nicer with them, but I doubt it, honestly. No, it was a pleasure. Thanks to Olivier, who is behind the scene today, for making this happen. Even though I take it personally that you show me in a dinosaur RPG suit, but anyway, have a nice evening, everyone, or afternoon, wherever you are. See you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.